Can you imagine the despair of a mother looking at her puppies for the last time? Because that's exactly what almost happened that day. The fire was advancing too quickly. The flames licked the dry ground, spreading in all directions, turning everything to ashes in a matter of seconds. In the center of that inferno, a scene that would chill the blood of anyone, a Rottweiler trapped in a barbed wire fence, its desperate eyes fixed on the 3 puppies crying on the other side. The twisted metal cut into its skin every time it tried to break free. The heat was unbearable. The smoke swallowed the air. And time simply no longer existed. The puppies, too small to understand the real danger, whimpered and approached the fence, as if wanting to touch their mother one last time. She barked, not out of anger, but from something much deeper. It was the bark of someone who knows she is about to lose everything. Each movement against the wire left red marks on her dark fur. The barbed wire seemed to have been made precisely to imprison her there. Achi, that moment in that cursed place. All around, total chaos. The dry vegetation fueled the flames. The wind was blowing in the wrong direction, pushing the fire directly towards them. There was no escape route. There was no plan B. It was now or never. A decision had to be made in fractions of a second, because in a few minutes, maybe less, that entire family would be consumed by the flames. The danger left no time to think, no time to weigh options. Action was necessary, and it was in that extreme moment, when all seemed lost, when death was already stretching its claws over that mother and her babies, that something extraordinary happened. Something you need to see to believe. What you are about to witness is not just a rescue. It's a race against death. It's pure courage facing the impossible. And I guarantee the next few minutes will leave you breathless. Before I show you what happened in the following seconds, I need to tell you something. This video only exists because people like you, who are here now, decided to press play. And if this story is touching you in any way, if you felt a pang in your chest imagining that mother trapped, looking at her puppies unable to protect them, I want to ask you something very simple. Leave a comment below describing what you've felt so far. It can be a word, a phrase, whatever comes from your heart. You know why. Because when you comment, when you interact, YouTube understands that this content matters, that these stories deserve to be seen by more people. And there are so many people out there who need to see what you're seeing now. If you're already feeling emotional, if you've imagined the despair of that scene, leave a like below. That shows me you're with me on this journey, that you understand the importance of each rescue, of each life saved. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, now's the time. Because here we don't just tell stories, we show the real difference that courage and compassion can make in the world. Click that red button and activate the bell, because I promise that every video here is worth every second of your time. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of content. It's what makes it worthwhile to continue showing these stories that many prefer not to see. And now, I need to tell you what happened when the flames were already meters away from that desperate family, and someone had to make the riskiest decision of their life. The flames were so close that it was possible to feel the heat distorting the air. The smoke rose in dense columns, engulfing the sky, and it was at that moment, in that exact second when everything seemed lost, that something happened. Something that would change everything. The 3 Rottweiler puppies, small, fragile, with their eyes still half closed from being so young, Maja choice. And that choice reveals something profound about nature, about trust, about the invisible connection that exists between living beings when death is knocking at the door. They didn't run away. Think about that for a second. They didn't run. They didn't hide. They didn't try to get away from the danger. The most basic instinct of any animal is to flee when it feels its life is at risk. It's automatic. It's primitive. It's the first rule of survival. But those puppies did the exact opposite. They stood there, still, crying softly, with those high-pitched whimpers that cut to the soul of anyone with a modicum of humanity. And do you know where they were looking? At the only human figure that was there. At the only person who could do something. There were no words, no desperate barks. It was just that continuous crying, that fixed gaze, those trembling little paws trying to get closer, but without the courage to go very far, because their mother was on the other side of the fence, trapped, bleeding, fighting against the barbed wire that held her like a cruel trap. The puppies knew, in some primitive and instinctive way, that being separated from their mother was dangerous. But they also knew, in some way I can't fully explain, that that person there was their last hope. This touches something very deep within us, human beings. There's an ancient emotional trigger that activates when we see something defenseless asking for help. It's not rational. It's not thought out. It's felt. It's visceral. When you look into the eyes of a living being that cannot defend itself, that has no voice, that has no choice, something inside you ignites. It's the same instinct that makes a person enter a burning building to save a child. It's the same impulse that makes someone dive into icy waters to rescue a stranger. It's the spark of compassion that ultimately defines what it means to be human. And those puppies, without knowing it, were activating exactly that. They didn't know how to ask for help with words. They didn't know how to explain the fear they felt. They didn't understand that fire was a deadly threat. But they asked for help anyway, with every whimper, with every look, with every hesitant movement towards that person. It was a silent but deafening plea. It was a soundless plea, but impossible to ignore. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what happened there wasn't just a rescue. It was a choice, a decision that divides people. Do you risk your own life for animals you don't even know? Do you enter a real danger zone with advancing fire, suffocating smoke, barbed wire fences that can tear your skin, without equipment, without help, without any guarantee that you'll be able to save anyone? Or do you retreat? Do you protect yourself and accept that some lives simply cannot be saved? There is no single right answer to that question, but there is a truth that few people talk about. The moment of decision reveals who you really are. Not who you think you are, not who you would like to be, but who you are when there is no time to think, when there is no room for calculations, when it's just you, the danger, and a choice that needs to be made now. The person who was there, at that moment, had to make that choice, and in the next few seconds, everything would depend on them. The mother Rottweiler remained trapped, her movements growing weaker as the wire cut deeper. The puppies continued to cry, that high-pitched, desperate sound that seems amplified by the tense silence, preceding a tragedy. And the fire wasn't waiting. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't give second chances. It simply advances, consumes, destroys. There's a phrase I never forget, and it makes perfect sense in this context. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is acting even when faced with paralyzing fear. Because let me tell you, those who were there were afraid. They were very afraid. Their whole bodies screamed to retreat, to protect themselves, not to take risks. But there is something greater than fear in certain people. There is a force that surpasses the instinct for self-preservation. And that force has a name: radical empathy. When you can feel another's pain as if it were your own, when you look at a living being suffering and can't simply turn your back on it, you cross a line. You enter a territory where the logic of individual survival loses strength, and a much older, much deeper logic takes over. It's the logic of the tribe, the pack, the community. It's the unconscious understanding that none of us survives alone, that our strength as a species has always been our ability to help each other, even when it costs us dearly. The puppies knew none of this. Of course, they only knew they were scared, that they wanted their mother, that the world was getting too hot and frightening, but their silent, pure plea echoed with immense force, and whoever was there heard it with their heart, not with their ears, and made the decision that would change everything. The heat was unbearable. The smoke already stung my eyes, making every breath a struggle. Time, that invisible and relentless enemy, was running out. There was no more room for doubt. There was no more time for planning. It was now. It was right there. It was life or death. And then what had to happen, happened. The transformation of spectator into hero, of witness into savior, of ordinary person into someone who, on that day, did something extraordinary. The first thing you need to understand about fire in dry vegetation is that it doesn't move like you see in the movies. It doesn't advance slowly, giving you time to think, to plan. No, it explodes. It leaps. It runs faster than anyone could run, carrying 3 puppies and trying to free an adult animal trapped in barbed wire. The wind was blowing in the wrong direction, pushing the flames directly toward where the family of Rottweilers was trapped. Every second that passed, the safety circle shrank. Every second lost was 1 meter less between life and death. The smoke was already thick enough to make breathing a real challenge. It wasn't that annoying little puff of smoke you smell when you walk past a barbecue. It was black, heavy smoke, laden with toxins. The kind that burns your throat and makes your eyes water instantly. The kind that gets into your lungs and makes you cough uncontrollably, even when you try to concentrate on anything else. Now, imagine trying to rescue frightened, panicked animals while you can barely see 3 meters ahead and every breath feels like it's scratching your chest from the inside. And then there's the barbed wire. That detail that many people underestimate until they're face to face with it. Barbed wire isn't just uncomfortable. It was designed, literally designed, to cause pain and block passage. The barbs are sharp, pointed, positioned at angles that ensure any sudden movement results in deep cuts. The mother Rottweiler was already bleeding. Every time she tried to break free, the metal bit deeper into her skin. And to free her, someone would have to put their own hands there. In that tangle of sharp metal, without gloves, without protection, with the fire getting closer and closer and the mental clock counting down the remaining seconds, there was no animal rescue team. There were no specialized firefighters. There was no veterinarian on call. There was no one with adequate equipment, specific training, or safety protocols. It was just one person, that scene of absolute chaos, and an impossible decision that needed to be made without room for error, because error, in that context, meant death. Not only for the animals, but possibly also for whoever tried to save them. This is the hidden truth of real rescues, of extreme situations that no one prepares you to face. There is no manual. There is no pause button. You are there. The danger is growing exponentially every second, and your brain is screaming millions of alerts at the same time. The fire is too close. You're going to get burned. The wire will tear you apart. You can't carry them all at once. What if you get trapped too? It's a storm of survival thoughts, all valid, all based on real and legitimate fears. But here's the revelation that changes everything. Truly heroic decisions are rarely made with mental clarity. They happen when you switch off the part of your brain that calculates risks and activate the part that simply acts. It's not madness. It's not irresponsibility. It's a shift in mindset so radical that it completely transforms what you're capable of doing. It's when you look at the chaos, watch the danger at all the odds stacked against you, and decide that it doesn't matter. That you're going to try anyway. That if there's a chance, however tiny, of saving those lives, you're going to take the risk. The impact of this internal transformation is physical. Your adrenaline surges. Your entire body goes into maximum emergency mode. Your hands stop shaking. Your vision becomes clearer, even through the smoke. You move faster than you thought possible. It's as if an external force takes control, guiding every movement, every decision, every step toward the impossible. And there, in that apocalyptic scene, with the fire roaring ever louder, with the smoke engulfing everything, with the puppies crying and the mother bleeding, trapped in the wire, this transformation happened. Time ceased to be a luxury and became the cruelest enemy. Every second was worth a life. Every hesitation could mean the end of everything. There was no more time to think. All that was left was to act. And what happened in the next few moments was a journey between the possible and the miraculous, between human courage and surrender to fate. It was all or nothing. It was now or never. If you've ever been in a situation where every second mattered, where you had to act even without knowing if it would work, write this down. I know what it's like to act on the edge, because that kind of experience leaves a lasting mark. The first direct look into that mother Rottweiler's eyes changed everything. It wasn't an aggressive look, as many might expect from a breed known for its strength and territorial protection. It was a look that communicated something much deeper, much more human than anyone could imagine possible in an animal. It was pure fear. It was absolute despair. It was pleading. And above all, it was trust. A trust placed in a stranger, in the only person who could do something in that impossible moment. She was trapped in a way that seemed almost intentional, a cruel twist of fate. The barbed wire had wrapped around her hind legs and part of her neck, creating a deadly trap that tightened with every movement she made. Her dark fur was stained red in several places. These weren't superficial scratches. They were deep wounds, the kind you know will need stitches, serious treatment, urgent medical attention. But medical treatment was a luxury of the future. If there was one, the present was fire, smoke, and a brutal choice. Every time she tried to move, you could see the pain coursing through her entire body. Her muscles tensed. Her paws trembled. A low moan escaped her throat. But she didn't stop trying, because on the other side of that cursed fence were her puppies. And maternal instinct is one of the most powerful forces in nature. No matter the pain, no matter the personal danger, a mother will fight to her last breath to protect her offspring. And that Rottweiler was doing exactly that, even if each attempt to break free hurt her even more. And then comes the dilemma, the emotional conflict that no one should have to face, but which in extreme situations becomes inevitable. What do you do first? Do you try to free the mother, knowing that this will take precious time, time that may not exist, while working with barbed wire that could cut you deeply, all with the fire approaching every second? Or do you grab the pups first, who are small, easier to carry, and ensure that at least they survive, even if it means leaving the mother behind for a few critical minutes that could be the difference between life and death? There is no right answer. That's what makes this type of situation so psychologically devastating. Any choice carries irreversible consequences. If you go straight for the puppies, the mother could die burned, trapped, alone, watching you walk away with her babies. If you try to save the mother first, the puppies could be engulfed by the flames while you fight against the wire, and then you lose them all. It's an impossible calculation. It's an equation without a perfect solution. It's the kind of decision that haunts a person for the rest of their life, regardless of the outcome. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this dynamic reveals something fundamental about the nature of moral dilemmas in emergency situations. We, as human beings, like to think we know what we would do in times of crisis. We watch movies, read stories, judge the choices of others with the comfortable distance of someone who is safe. But when you are there, when it's your decision, when real lives depend on what you will do in the next 5 seconds, everything changes. Theory turns to dust. Mental planning crumbles. You are left there, paralyzed for a fraction of a second that seems to last an eternity, while your brain tries to process the impossible. What complicates things even further is that the mother was watching. She was seeing everything, and there was something in that look that seemed to communicate a clear message. Save my puppies. Forget about me. Save them. It may seem romanticized. It may seem like human projection onto an animal. But anyone who has ever had deep contact with dogs knows that they communicate, not with words, but with an emotional language so powerful that it transcends species barriers. And that mother was communicating her absolute priority. She had already accepted her fate. What she couldn't accept was losing her puppies. But accepting that sacrifice from her meant carrying the weight of that choice forever. It meant looking back, seeing that mother trapped, bleeding, waiting for death to approach, and moving forward anyway. Can you imagine what that does to a person? The emotional impact of leaving a living being behind, even if it's to save others. It's the kind of trauma that doesn't fade. It's an invisible but permanent scar. And time was running out. The heat was becoming unbearable. The smoke was thicker. The fire was so close that the ominous crackling of the flames consuming the dry vegetation could already be heard. Decision. Now, there was no more room for analysis. There was no more time to weigh options. It was a matter of choosing and acting, or losing everything. The decision came in the form of a uniform. A police officer passing through the area saw the smoke, heard the desperate barking, and did something no one was obligated to do. He stopped. This may seem obvious. It may seem like part of the job, but I'll tell you a truth that few admit. Stopping wasn't the only option. In fact, the most rational option, the safest one, the one any procedure manual would recommend, would be to call for specialized reinforcements, isolate the area, and wait. Wait for the firefighters. Wait for the animal rescue team. Wait for the appropriate equipment. Wait until the situation was under control and the risk was minimized. But waiting meant certain death for that family of Rottweilers, and that police officer knew it. He looked at the scene, assessed the danger, felt the heat of the approaching flames, saw the smoke thickening the air, and made a decision that went far beyond professional duty. He decided to be human first, police officer second. He decided that some lives can't wait for protocols, that some situations require you to put your own safety second, even if no one will applaud you for it, even if you might get seriously hurt, even if it goes wrong. Here's something that needs to be said perfectly clearly. This man wasn't a superhero. He didn't have superpowers. He didn't have special training in animal rescue during fires. He was an ordinary human being with ordinary fears, ordinary survival instincts, and a family waiting for him at home. He had every logical and justifiable reason not to take the risk. No one would blame him if he had called on the radio and waited for backup. No one would question his courage or his character. But he looked into those pleading eyes, at that trapped mother bleeding, at those puppies crying without understanding the danger, and something inside him simply couldn't turn his back on him. This is the transformation that defines true acts of courage. It's not about not being afraid. It's about acknowledging fear, feeling it coursing through every cell of your body, hearing your mind screaming every possible warning, and still deciding that there is something more important than your own safety at that moment. It's such a radical shift in priorities that it goes against millions of years of evolution that programmed our brains to keep us alive above all else. He got out of the patrol car, and at that moment, he ceased to be just a police officer on patrol and became the only chance those animals had. The impact of that decision was immense, even if he perhaps didn't stop to think about it. Because when you decide to act in an extreme situation, you're not just saving lives. In that specific moment, you're proving something fundamental about human nature. You're showing that compassion can be stronger than fear, that empathy can overcome the instinct for self-preservation, that there are still people willing to risk everything for beings they can't even thank with words. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because the mindset needed to make this decision reveals something powerful about how we function in times of crisis. Our brain has two main decision-making systems, one fast, instinctive, emotional, and the other slow, analytical, rational. In normal situations, the ideal is to use the rational system. Think carefully, weigh pros and cons, and make informed decisions. But in extreme emergencies, this rational system can paralyze you. It can trap you in an endless loop of what-ifs, risk calculations, and analysis of possibilities until it's too late. What this police officer did was trust the system's rapid response. He saw suffering, recognized urgency, and acted, not because he was reckless or imprudent, but because some primitive and deep part of his brain understood that this was one of those moments where hesitation kills. It's a wisdom that doesn't come from formal training. It comes from something older, more instinctive. It comes from the part of us that still remembers that we survived as a species because we helped each other, because we took risks for others, because we were able to put the collective above the individual when it really mattered. He approached the barbed wire fence. He saw the extent of the wounds on the mother Rottweiler. He heard the puppies crying louder and louder, feeling the heat intensify. He felt the smoke burning his own lungs, and he began to work. Without proper gloves, without specialized tools, just his hands, his determination, and an invisible clock counting down the seconds before the fire reached them all. This is the kind of courage that doesn't appear in official reports, that doesn't necessarily win medals, that happens behind the scenes of real life, far from the cameras, far from the spotlight. But that changes everything for the person being saved. His hands touched the barbed wire for the first time, and the metal bit into his skin immediately. It wasn't a light scratch. It was a clean cut, the kind where you feel the warmth of the blood even before the pain fully registers in your brain. But he didn't back down. He couldn't back down because with each passing second, the fire gained ground. You could literally see the flames advancing, leaping from one pile of dry leaves to another, as if they were alive, as if they had a will of their own, and that will was to destroy everything in their path. The smoke was so thick now that breathing had become a conscious task. You know that feeling when you're underwater and you need to surface for air. It was similar, except there was no surface to surface to. Every breath burned. Every exhale was accompanied by coughing. His eyes watered so much that it was difficult to focus clearly. And in the midst of all this, he needed to work with surgical precision to untangle the wire from the mother Rottweiler's body without hurting her further, without seriously injuring himself, without making any sudden movements that could frighten the puppies or worsen the situation. And here's something no one prepares you for. A wounded and terrified animal doesn't understand that you're trying to help. The mother Rottweiler, despite everything, despite that pleading look she'd given minutes before, was now in pure survival mode. When his hands approached, she growled. It was a low, guttural growl, laden with pain and fear, her teeth bared, her muscles tensed. Her natural instinct, in that moment of extreme vulnerability, was to defend herself. It was to bite. It was to fight against anything that touched her, even if that thing was trying to save her. Imagine you're in this position. You're trying to free a large, strong animal capable of causing serious injury with a bite, and this animal is scared, in pain, trapped in a way that every movement you make could either free it or hurt it further. And all the while, the fire is getting closer. The heat is becoming unbearable. The smoke is clouding your judgment. And now, the animal you're trying to save could attack you at any second. It's a situation where every step, literally every movement of your hands, could be the last one you consciously and deliberately make. The puppies were right there, just a few meters away, and the sound they made was heartbreaking. It wasn't those loud, insistent barks anymore. It was a sharp, desperate whimpering, the kind of cry that cuts through any noise, through the crackling of the fire, through the roar of the wind feeding the flames. They were calling for their mother. They were asking for comfort that couldn't come. They were scared in a way no living being should be, especially not so young, so defenseless, so completely dependent on adults for survival. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what was happening there wasn't just a physical rescue. It was an intense psychological battle. The police officer needed to remain absolutely calm, while everything around him screamed panic. He needed to move quickly, but carefully. He needed to be firm with the Rottweiler's mother to control the situation, but gentle enough not to increase her terror even more. It's an impossible balance to describe. It's a delicate dance between urgency and patience, between strength and compassion. Each barb of wire he managed to untangle was a small victory, but small victories took precious seconds, and seconds were the scarcest resource there. The fire didn't wait. It didn't slow down. It didn't give a break. It advanced with the cruel indifference of the forces of nature, consuming everything without discrimination, without pity, without pause. The first hind leg was freed. Blood, lots of blood. The wound was deep. The skin was torn. But it was free, at least partially. The mother Rottweiler felt it and tried to move, but the wire was still wrapped around her neck. Another leg. The sudden movement caused the metal to cut deeper. She screamed. It was a sound no animal should make. It was pure pain transformed into sound, and that sound made the puppies cry even louder. His hands were cut in several places now. His blood, her blood, mixed on the hot metal of the wire, but he continued, fingers working quickly, unwinding, pulling, loosening. The smoke was so thick that he needed to work more by touch than by sight. to feel where the wire was stuck, to feel where to pull, to feel where to push. All this while the mother trembled, while she could bite at any moment, while the fire drew ever closer. And then something changed. The mother Rottweiler stopped growling. She looked at him, really looked, and in that look there was recognition. There was understanding, as if some deep part of her, beyond the fear and the pain, had finally understood. This human is saving me. This human is risking everything for me and my puppies. If you've ever had a moment where an animal looked at you with that kind of profound understanding, write this down. I saw that look because it's something that changes you forever. That look changed everything. And when I say changed everything, I'm not exaggerating for dramatic effect. I'm talking about a real, visible, palpable transformation that happened in that second. The mother Rottweiler, who seconds before was tense, Rottweiler, with every muscle in her body screaming defense and protection, suddenly relaxed. Not completely, because the pain was still there, because the danger was still real, but something fundamental changed in the way she looked at that man working to free her. It was as if an invisible connection had formed, a bridge of understanding that didn't need words, that didn't need language, that happened on a much more primitive and true level than any conversation could reach. She understood, in some deep and inexplicable way, she understood that those cut and bleeding hands weren't there to hurt her, that human wasn't a threat, that he was, in fact, the only chance she and her cubs had to survive that hell. And do you know what happened then? She stopped fighting him. She became quiet, still trembling with pain, still panting, still clearly terrified by the relentlessly advancing fire, but quiet, letting him work, trusting, and the trust placed by a wounded animal in a moment of absolute vulnerability is something that defeats any cynicism about the nature of the connection between humans and animals, because trust like that cannot be forced. It cannot be manufactured. It simply happens when two souls recognize in each other the absence of malicious intent. The police officer sensed that change. Of course, he did. When you're so close to a living being, when your hands are literally touching its trembling body, you perceive every alteration in its emotional state. And that change gave him exactly what he needed, the ability to work with a little more speed, with a little more confidence in his own movements, without the constant fear of being bitten, without having to divide his attention between freeing and protecting himself. He managed to free her second hind leg. Now, only her neck remained. This was the most delicate, the most dangerous part. The wire was dangerously wrapped around her throat. One wrong pull and it could cause serious damage, could make everything worse. But his hands, even cut, even trembling with adrenaline and effort, moved with a precision born of absolute necessity. There was no room for error. There was no second chance. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what was happening there transcended physical rescue. It was a revelation about animals' ability to recognize intention. Science has already proven that dogs, specifically, have developed over thousands of years of living with humans a unique ability to read our facial expressions, our body language, our tone of voice. They can distinguish between someone who wants to help and someone who represents danger with frightening accuracy. And there, in that extreme moment, that ability was saving her life. Because think about it, if she had continued fighting, if she had continued trying to bite, trying to struggle, the rescue would have become impossible. The time they had was so limited that any further resistance could have been fatal. But she chose to trust. She chose to believe that this human, despite causing momentary pain by manipulating the wire, was doing so to free her, not to hurt her. The puppies also sensed the change. It's amazing how sensitive young animals are to their mother's emotional state. When she relaxed, when she stopped growling and struggling, they also became a little calmer. They still cried, because fear doesn't disappear so quickly, but the whimpers became less desperate, as if an invisible message had passed from their mother to them. It's okay. This human is helping. We'll be all right. And then, with one last careful movement, the wire was removed from her neck. She was free, completely free. Her paws touched the ground without restriction for the first time in how long? Minutes. It felt like an eternity. She staggered a little, her hind legs still weak from the injuries, the exertion, the trauma. But she was standing. She was free. And the first thing she even bleeding learned was to move toward her puppies. This gesture, this absolute priority, even after everything she had been through, sums up everything about motherhood in the animal kingdom. No matter the pain, no matter the personal danger, the priority is always the offspring. And seeing this happening in real time, seeing a mother who has just been freed from a deadly trap ignore her own injuries to go to her young, redefines what you understand about unconditional love. The fire was just a few meters away now, literally a few meters. The heat was so intense that the air seemed to ripple. There was no more time for emotional pauses. There was no more time to process what had just happened. It was time to get everyone out of there before the flames reached them. There was no time to celebrate the mother's liberation. The fire didn't wait. It was right there, so close you could see the individual flames dancing, leaping, advancing. The policeman turned to the puppies. 3 tiny lives, 3 hearts beating fast, 3 chances to make the difference between life and death. And every second counted in a way that's hard to put into words. It was as if time had become something physical, something you could feel slipping through your fingers. He went to the first puppy, the smallest of the 3, the one closest to the fence, trembling, its little eyes still barely open, fixed on its mother who was now free but could barely stand. The policeman picked up the puppy with bloodied hands. The small, warm, soft body, weighing almost nothing, fit completely in his palms. The puppy whimpered, frightened by the human touch, by the smell of smoke, by everything, but it was safe now. It was protected. Another one saved. He carried the first pup away from the danger zone, placed it on the ground a safe distance away, and ran back. Its mother tried to follow him, but her hind legs gave way. She fell. She got up with difficulty. The pain was visible in every movement, but she didn't stop trying. She didn't stop wanting to get close to her pups. The maternal instinct stronger than any injury, stronger than any logic of self-preservation. The second puppy was a little further away. It had tried to move in the opposite direction from the fire, but was disoriented, walking in small circles, the kind of confused movement animals make when they are in absolute panic. The policeman reached it in 3 long strides. He picked up the puppy. This one was a little bigger, a little heavier. It cried louder when it was lifted off the ground. A sharp cry that pierced the noise of the fire. Another one alive. 2 puppies saved. 1 to go. But time was running out brutally. The fire had advanced so far that the heat was literally unbearable. The air burned their lungs, the exposed skin of their faces, and arms felt like it was being cooked. The smoke was so thick that seeing beyond a few meters was impossible. And the third puppy, the last one, was exactly in the direction from where the fire was coming. He ran. He didn't think. He didn't calculate. He simply ran towards the flames, against any survival instinct, because there was a life there that could still be saved. The third puppy was paralyzed with fear. It didn't move, it just cried. A continuous, mechanical sound, as if its brain had gone into a loop and didn't know how to do anything but express terror. The flames were so close now that he could feel the heat through his clothes. A few more seconds and that puppy would be reached. There was no margin for error. It was now or never. He stretched out his arms, grabbed the puppy at the last possible second, and turned around. Another one saved. Another life snatched from the clutches of death. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what just happened there wasn't just about saving animals. It was about the value we place on each individual life. We live in a world where numbers become abstract, where we hear about tragedies involving hundreds, thousands of victims, and our brains simply can't process the magnitude. But when it's one life at a time, when you see, touch, feel the weight of each individual being saved, the abstraction disappears. Each life becomes non-negotiable. Each life becomes sacred. 3 puppies, 3 lives, 3 victories against the impossible. And the journey wasn't over yet. because now he had 3 puppies saved, but the mother was injured, barely able to walk, and they all needed to be taken away from there to a safe place before the fire surrounded the entire area, and he was alone, one man, for animals, and a fire that showed no signs of letting up. The revelation that many people don't understand about real rescues is that the moment of saving is only the beginning. Then comes the transport, then comes the treatment, then comes ensuring that those lives, saved with so much effort, are not lost due to lack of subsequent care. And this police officer, even exhausted, even with his hands cut and bleeding, even with his lungs burning from inhaling so much smoke, knew that the work was far from over. He looked at the 3 puppies, small, vulnerable, dependent. He looked at the mother, injured, in shock, but still trying to reach them. And he made another decision. He was going to get them all out of there. All of them. No matter the personal cost, no matter the effort required. He had gone too far, risked too much to lose someone now. The impact of that determination was palpable. You could see it in the way he moved, in the way he quickly organized what he needed to do. First, gather the 3 puppies in one place. Second, help the mother move. Third, get them all to the vehicle, to safety, away from the inferno that continued to spread behind them. The vehicle moved away from the danger zone with everyone on board. For Rottweilers, that minutes before were literally seconds away from being consumed by the flames were now safe, breathing, alive. The fire continued to roar behind them, continuing to consume everything in its path. But that particular family had escaped. They had survived. And that, amidst the total chaos, was an absolute victory. The policeman stopped the vehicle at a safe distance and simply breathed for a moment. That first deep breath away from the dense smoke burned in a different way, a good way. It was clean air, entering lungs that had been tested to the limit. His hands trembled now that the adrenaline was beginning to subside. The cuts from the barbed wire throbbed, reminding him of every second of that struggle against the metal and against time. But he was whole, and all the animals were alive. The 3 puppies were huddled together in the back seat, still frightened, still whimpering softly, but safe. Their mother was beside them, finally reunited with her offspring. She sniffed them obsessively, checking each one, that instinctive maternal behavior of verifying that everyone is all right. Her wounds needed urgent attention. Blood still trickled from her hind paws and neck where the wire had cut deep, but she ignored her own pain. All that mattered, all that had always mattered to her, was that her puppies were there, were alive, were with her. In the background, the fire crews finally arrived. Trucks with sirens, men with appropriate equipment, hoses being unrolled. They would work for hours to control that fire, to prevent it from spreading further, to ensure that no more lives were lost. But for that family of Rottweilers, the battle had already been won. It had been defeated by a man who decided he couldn't simply drive away and let it happen. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what happened there that day created scars that go far beyond physical injuries. Yes, the Rottweiler mother would have scars. Yes, the police officer would have the marks of the wire on his hands. But the deepest scars, the ones that truly matter, are the invisible ones. They are the scars on the soul, on the memory, on the ways, the world after going through something like that. That police officer would never be the same again. Not because he became a hero, not because someone would give him a medal or make a story in the newspaper, but because he had looked death straight in the eye, had felt the literal heat of the flames trying to reach him, and had chosen to risk everything anyway. This kind of experience fundamentally transforms who you are. You learn something about no simulation no teach. You learn that when it really matters, you are capable of much more than you ever imagined. And what about those animals? They would carry the memory of that day in ways we can't fully comprehend. Studies show that animals, especially dogs, have powerful emotional memories. They remember traumatic events, but they also remember who saved them. The mother Rottweiler, whenever she saw a uniform, whenever she smelled smoke, would probably have reactions. But within those difficult memories would also be that moment of connection. That moment when she chose to trust a human who was trying to help her. The silence that followed the chaos was almost deafening. After so much noise, so much panic, so much intensity, the moment of quiet was surreal. The puppies eventually stopped crying. The mother lay down, exhausted, allowing her injuries to finally be noticed, to finally cry out for attention now that the immediate danger had passed. And in that silence, in that post-storm calm, there was something sacred. There was a profound awareness that something extraordinary had happened. Because, you see, this wasn't just any rescue. Rescues happen every day. Firefighters save cats from trees. Specialized teams rescue animals from floods. But this was different. This was a choice made by an ordinary individual in an impossible moment. It was the decision that those lives were worth the risk. It was proof that there are still people willing to put others, even if they are animals, even if they are strangers, above their own safety. An entire family had been saved, not by accident, not by luck, but because someone decided it was worth trying. And that decision, that moment of radical courage, created a ripple effect that goes far beyond that specific day. Because when you hear that story, when you truly absorb what happened there, something inside you also changes. You start to question what you would do in the same situation. You begin to see possibilities for making a difference that previously seemed impossible. If you feel this story has stirred something within you, that it has made you question your own capacity for courage, write this down. I too can make a difference. Because recognizing this is the first step. But what if he hadn't stopped? That's the question that begs to be asked. What if that police officer had seen the smoke, heard the barking, assessed the danger, and decided it wasn't worth the risk? What if he had done exactly what any procedure manual would probably recommend? Call the specialized teams and wait? The answer is clear and brutal. That family of Rottweilers would have died. All of them. The mother, trapped in the barbed wire, unable to escape, would have been consumed by the flames while helplessly watching her puppies suffer the same fate. It wouldn't have been anyone's fault specifically. It would just be another tragedy on a day of fire. A few more lives lost that no one but a select few would know or remember. This hidden truth is what makes this story so important. Because for every rescue that happens, for every life saved by someone who decides to act, countless others are lost simply because no one was there, or because those who were decided it wasn't their responsibility, or because fear overcame compassion. And I'm not judging. Fear is real. Danger is real. Hesitation is human and understandable. But that doesn't change the fact that decisions matter, that choices have consequences, that sometimes the difference between life and death is literally one person deciding to stop instead of moving forward. How many lives are lost every day because no one decides to act? Think about that for a moment. Not just animal lives, but human lives too. How many people in emergency situations don't receive help because witnesses wait for someone more qualified to show up? How many opportunities to make a difference are wasted because we think we aren't heroes, that we don't have what it takes, that someone else should take the initiative? Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject because there's a transformation that needs to happen in how we view heroism. Popular culture has sold us a very specific idea of what a hero is: capes, superpowers, a special destiny. But real heroes aren't like that. Real heroes are police officers who stop to save animals in fires. They are firefighters who enter burning buildings. They are ordinary people who see someone drowning and jump into the water. They are doctors who work impossible shifts to save one more life. They are teachers who invest extra time in a struggling student. They are neighbors who check on the elderly during heat waves. True heroism isn't about being special. It's about choosing to do what's right even when it's difficult, even when it's dangerous, even when no one is watching. And that mindset, that way of looking at the world, is available to all of us. It's not genetics. It's not luck. It's a conscious decision that you're going to be the kind of person who acts when it matters. The impact of this story goes far beyond that specific day. Those 3 puppies grew up. They became healthy, strong adult dogs. Perhaps they have their own families now. The mother recovered from her injuries, the scars eventually covered by the fur that grew back. And somewhere, that police officer continues his life, probably without thinking much about that day, because for him it was just doing what needed to be done. But for those who hear this story, for those who truly absorb the meaning of what happened there, the impact is lasting, because stories like this remind us of what is possible. They remind us that the world isn't just tragedy and indifference, that there are still people willing to risk everything for strangers. That compassion hasn't died. That courage isn't just a movie character. It's real, it's tangible, and it's inside each of us, waiting for the moment when we decide it's worth activating. So here's the challenge, the final revelation I want to leave you with. You don't need to wait for a fire to be a hero. You don't need a life or death situation to make a difference. Every day, in small and large ways, opportunities arise to choose compassion instead of indifference, action instead of paralysis, courage instead of fear. And the sum of these choices, made by millions of people, is what determines the kind of world we live in. This story happened because one man decided that those lives mattered, that the risk was worth it, that he couldn't simply turn his back. And the result was an entire family saved. A journey from hell to safety, proof that there are still real heroes walking among us, in uniform or not, making a difference one life at a time. If you've made it this far, to this exact moment, it's because this story has touched you in some way. And I want you to know that this matters. It matters because it means you're the kind of person who is still moved by acts of courage, who still believes that making a difference is possible, who still has that spark of hope even in a world that sometimes seems to have lost its way. And if you're that kind of person, then you need to stay here with me on this channel, because every week I bring you real stories like this one, stories that remind you of the best that humanity can be, that show you courage in action, that inspire you to be the best version of yourself. So click on that subscribe button. It's not just pressing a button, it's you saying that this kind of content matters to you, that you want to continue being part of this community of people who believe that it's still worth caring. And before you go, leave a comment here. I'm here until the end. I read all the comments. And when I see someone who watched the whole story, who stayed from beginning to end following this journey, it shows me that it's worth continuing to tell these stories. So leave a comment. Let me know you were here with me throughout this whole story. If this story touched your heart, if you felt that tightness in your chest along with me, leave a like below. It's not about numbers. It's about connection. It's about you telling me that we're on the same wavelength, that this story reached you in the way I hoped it would. And look, there's a video right here that you need to see. It's another story of courage, of impossible choices, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Click and stay with me there, because I promise it's worth every second of your time. See you soon. And thank you, from the bottom of my heart, for staying with me until the end of this journey.